Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community.
A very good morning and warm welcome once again to Money Sense. I'm Simon Cawdery, and I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Samantha Whitmer. Samantha works with Cayman Finance right here in the Cayman Islands. Rather than me butcher your background, your CV, and what Cayman Finance does, I'm going to start off straight away by saying, tell me a little bit about yourself, and then tell me a little bit about Cayman Finance, because a lot of our audience knows that Cayman's a big place for financial services, but often that's considered an international thing and not so much a domestic thing. So perhaps help educate us on the background behind yourself and also Cayman Finance itself.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Simon. Really excited to be here. Well, I'm originally born and raised in Cayman, grew up here all my life, and I think I'm just a very passionate Caymanian that very much has kind of dedicated myself to promoting the island in many ways. So a little bit about my background is I'm a chartered accountant. I studied, I have a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and a Master's of Science in Sustainability from U.S. universities. As I mentioned, I'm a chartered accountant and project management professional. I spent half of my career based in Cayman working in the asset management and I would say audit sphere here in Cayman. And then I moved over to Hong Kong for the last 8 years. So I had this amazing opportunity to go and work in another financial center. And I worked for large firms over there, such as Ferretti Group, Baker McKinsey, and most recently Ernst & Young. I decided to come back to the island a year ago. So I think it's been
Missing
about
home
a year.
while you're at that
I
point.
was missing home. Had an incredible opportunity to be in Asia, but I think, there's just part of me that, I love the Cayman Islands, and I had an opportunity to come back, and now I've taken on the role of Associate Director of Funds and Capital Markets with Cayman Finance. We are the industry association for financial services here. We are very much focused on helping the financial services community here in the Cayman Islands. We're a public-private partnership between the government and private sector. So we have around 150 members that also support us, and those are some of the largest organizations here in Cayman. But also just in essence, the industry itself is really much supportive on trying to bridge that gap between the two.
I think one thing you said there, which often strikes me and perhaps other people as intriguing, is this public-private partnership element, because the question might be, well, who are Cayman Finance representing? What is the objective when you talk about the funds industry? You've got the government as an inverted commas shareholder. You've got the private sector as shareholders. So how do you bridge the potentially sometimes differences of views or different perspectives? How does that get bridged? And what is ultimately the objective of the industry or the association then?
Sure. So we have been around for 20 years, actually, which is a very long time. But it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that we've really been focused on sort of a different aspect of what it is that we do to move forward in helping the industry here. So we're a team of 10 now. We originally from 3, so we have grown. And really we're focused on 5 key strategic priorities. So the first one is the promotional aspect. So we are in essence, promotional arm for the Cayman Islands when it comes to going out and promoting financial services.
And that means whether it be funds, insurance, banking, trusts, all those things, you promote all of those on behalf of the Cayman Islands.
Correct. So funds and capital markets falls under me as associate director in that space. We have Brittany Mitvicker, who focuses on insurance, reinsurance, banking, and trusts. And then we have Haymond Rankin, who you've probably seen recently in the news, running for government. He works on the digital assets and fintech side of things. We also have a fourth element, which is the community engagement. And I think that the community aspect is really important for us because in essence, and I think it's really the culture here, we're very much about helping the Cayman community and making sure that, our young people and the community of the Cayman Islands have opportunities in this space.
There was something I saw, and I probably owe Steve, your boss, the head of Cayman Finance, an apology because I think I was on summer vacation or early summer vacation. But there was something about Cayman Finance introducing some, was it scholarships or internships, trying to get young Caymanians into the financial services sector. And I suppose when I looked at that, I thought that's quite unusual because it's not really happened before, but equally incredibly valuable for those people who get those sorts of scholarships or opportunities for internships. So that's kind of what you're talking about, is trying to bring young Caymanians up to speed with what goes on and then bring them up to speed. And once up to speed, get them into the industry.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is our graduate training
That's
program,
yeah.
Which we've just launched, and that's providing young Caymanians opportunities when they come back from university to get a job in financial services with a pay of $40,000 and a really incredible training program that they can take part in. We also have an incredible lead program, which is for our young high school students. We also have 2 interns in our office every quarter that we rotate, and we give them an opportunity to sit and work with us. And the 2 ladies that are in my office right now are absolutely incredible. They're both studying law in the UK. I was absolutely blown away by all the help that I've been receiving this summer from them. I did want to go back just to our strategic priorities, just to make sure everyone's kind of full aware of the full spectrum. So we've got promotion, product development. We very much look at the landscape here of speaking with the industry and understanding where it is that we can continue to make improvements and make sure we're advocating for those and bringing those to light. And we also speak a lot with the onshore legal counsels, some of the fund managers, some of the investors that are out there, and understanding what it is that they're looking for in setting up a fund here or another aspect of financial services that they take advantage of. We also have member engagement. So I mentioned that we have 150 members. So we very much collaborate with the industry and try to do events collectively or around the world that continue to promote the Cayman Islands in the best way possible.
You say 150 members. I think you're sort of underselling yourself a little bit, because by that you mean 150 firms.
Yes.
But within
correct.
those firms, there could be 5 or 2,000 people. So the actual number of people who are connected to Cayman Finance is probably some magnitude larger than that number, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think this is an important aspect, because that's really why we want to bridge that gap between the government and private sector, because we have so many incredible people here, so many incredible firms that are really wanting to work together and continue to make Cayman a global hub around the world for various offerings that we have.
So there's one thing you said there was about policy. And what intrigued me there is that we've been through a period fairly recently of rapid evolution in the funds industry, in the sense of the crypto space and the digital asset space. And that's something that's seen a lot of regulatory changes, a lot of laws being written to promote the ability of people to do business here. And I suppose that would be something, presumably then, that Cayman Finance would have been spearheading along with the private sector to encourage government to write this, write that policy, write those regulations, write those rules. That's what you're alluding to when you're saying about policy and getting the statute changed to allow new products, new ideas to be generated here.
Definitely. And I think that we have the power of the members, and those are firms that are working in this industry and seeing it firsthand of like, what are some of the things that we actually need to do in order to continue to develop Cayman, keep it leading, keeping it ahead of the curve, and also making sure that we're meeting the standard setting guidelines that are required internationally. And so I think that we're always out in the community. We're always out with our members, trying to understand what it is that they really need from our policy setters, from the regulator, from the government, but also the other way around is also understanding what is it that we are working on and how do we get that out to people that are using the Cayman Islands, people that want to set up a business here, organizations that are working in this industry. How do we make sure that everybody's working together and also upholding the highest level of standard possible to make sure that we stay the gold standard, which is where we're really sitting right now when it comes to looking at the standard setting bodies from FATF and OECD. They're really, from what I believe, they're very happy with kind of the level that we're working at. And I think if we all kind of 3 parts of this work together well, I think we'll continue to see Cayman stay on top as a financial services jurisdiction. Yeah,
there are always challenges, aren't there, in the offshore world? Speaking from my experience, you see often international bodies are willing to give Cayman the green light after it's done an awful lot of work, and often sometimes goes beyond the requirements of many other countries around the world who are already considered totally acceptable places. And yet we are held to almost to a higher standard for reasons that are perhaps historical in nature. But as you say, we are on all the white lists. We are off all the bad naughty steps, and so
We are.
our goal is to keep ourselves there, presumably.
We are, and I would just add to that, another role in Cayman Finance is also we do monitor the media landscape. It's maybe not something people see every day, but Cayman Finance, we're really looking at what is the news that is coming out about the Cayman Islands, and can we debunk those myths? We've been sort of pulled into a sensational view of like what the Cayman Islands is and, what it's used for. And I think the fact that we hold such high standards when it comes to our financial services industry, and we're making sure that we are abiding by the rules and regulations globally that are required in order to exist at such a high level, why are we getting put in these categories where the Cayman Islands is seen in a negative light? Because actually what the work that's being done here is absolutely incredible. We have a great regulator. Our government's consistently working really hard on making sure that regulation is coming through that's favorable, but also adhering to those rules and regulations that are required. So, that's part of our role, is I guess not only reviewing the media landscape, but also we're creating articles with our members about the good things that are happening here. What are some of the things that are on the horizon? What can people take advantage of? Also, what great work is being done locally to promote our population here, to continue to make sure there's opportunities for our Caymanian people for years to come. Because I think ultimately the financial services industry plays such a pivotal role for the island.
Well, I want to talk about that, absolutely, about the role the financial services industry played. I also want to just sort of pick up on something you said, because I think it often goes unnoticed in Cayman, some of the narrative that you guys put in overseas. So I've seen occasionally, perhaps occasionally might be an understatement, some negative press about Cayman. And then you are quite quick as an organisation to write letters to those same papers that have printed articles that have been not necessarily defaming, but in putting Cayman in a quite negative light, trying to explain the correct position as you would see it. And that's, I think, quite an important point as to, it's no good just being friendly with your friends. You've got to try and persuade those who dislike, for whatever the historical reason is, to become more favourably inclined towards who we are, because otherwise you've got to change minds. You can't just keep those people who are always going to be on your side regardless. You've got to try and continually try to improve the mindset of those who aren't historically favourable towards oneself.
Definitely. Protection is a key thing for us here in Cayman. And obviously it does flow over, different sectors. But when it comes to financial services, if we're doing so well in some of the areas that we continue to expand in, there's always going to be individuals or other associations that may obviously not want to see us do as well. And also there's a lot of myths out there. And I think that's what we're trying to debunk, is to say, what is it truly that the Cayman Islands offers? What are we doing really well? And how are we making sure that also investors stay protected, firms stay protected, our people stay protected? Because at the end of the day, we all need to work together collectively to make this ecosystem work.
Yeah, I think I just want to check with our producer. Do we need to take a break, did you say? So we'll just take a quick break right now, and then we're going to come back, and I think I want to focus on just what is the landscape of the finance industry and the funds industry, because that's your focus area in particular here in Cayman. And that will do straight after this break.
This is an announcement for shareholders of Cayman National Corporation Limited. Republic Financial Holdings has made a cash offer of $7.75 per share for the purchase of the remaining minority shareholdings of Cayman National. The offer is open until 5 p.m. Cayman time on July 29th. Shareholders are reminded to review the offer and submit their form of acceptance to offers@rfhl.com if they wish to accept the offer. For any questions, shareholders can reach out to Republic Financial Holdings at offerquestions@rfhl.com.
This is
Money Sense, bringing an informed financial perspective to the Cayman community. Brought to you by the CFA Society Cayman Islands.
And now, more Money Sense.
Welcome back to Money Sense. We're here with Samantha Whitmer, who is the Associate Director for the funds industry at Cayman Finance. We talked a little bit about Cayman Finance before the break, and we said we would focus in the second half of the show just going into some of the nitty-gritty about what actually is happening here, some data, some statistics. Your focus area is the funds area. So perhaps just give us the lay of the landscape as to how many funds there are, what does that really mean for people in Cayman? Because I think you're going to tell us some big numbers, but sometimes big numbers can get lost in the weeds in terms of what that really means. So we'll dwell into that as well. So give us some statistics to tease us this morning.
So I know we have a number of different listeners here today. So I wanted to put together kind of an easy to remember definition of an investment fund, just so everyone has that in mind. So a legal structure that enables investment managers to pool money from multiple investors and to invest it collectively. So instead of investors buying investments on their own, they have the opportunity to put money into a fund, and that fund is then run by a professional fund manager. And that's really what we see Cayman kind of known for globally, is an international fund domicile. It's been around for about 30, 40 years here in the Cayman Islands. It's something that we have been known for across the world. And I know there's other jurisdictions out there that offer something similar. But I think what really sets Cayman apart are a number of different focus areas that we really are proud of here in Cayman. So I'll just quickly caveat and say that these funds are split between mutual funds and also private funds. So the private fund side, we're starting to see a lot more, we're starting to see growth in both areas, but really from the private funds aspect, being whether it's hedge funds, private equity, private credit, real estate funds, or venture capital. These are really attractive to the international landscape of attracting funds to set up here. So I'll go into a little bit on the numbers, I think, which is important. I've written those down. So currently, right now, as of June 30th, the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority has reported that we have 30,700 funds. So I'll take a quick step back.
That's a pretty big number.
It's a pretty big number. I think, though, we need to look at it from a couple of different angles. So first and foremost, in 2023, we had around 25,000 funds registered here, and now we have 30,700 funds. And it's only in the last, I'd say 8 or 9 months, so I guess almost since I've been with Cayman Finance, that those numbers have grown by almost 700 funds. So we're consistently seeing that numbers are increasing. End of last year, 30,000 registered funds, now 30,700 registered funds. This number is incredible when you look at the global landscape of the funds industry. We have, number one, we are the leader in number of investment funds registered, but also when you compare it to other jurisdictions, we have more than double of all the other jurisdictions combined. So those are big numbers. And I think we need to be really proud of that to see Cayman as really a favorable landscape for setting up your investment fund.
In a sense, that's part of, I suppose, why Cayman often has a target on its back, because, as you say, we've got 30,000, that's larger than all the others combined. And so people will look at that perhaps with a little jealousy, perhaps with a little angst that that could be activity done in a different country. So often, sometimes when we think about some of the regulatory pressures that the international community puts us under, perhaps it's a little bit of jealousy and a little bit of concern for their own domestic areas. And that's, I think, just from a listener's perspective, that the quantum of our success is a great thing, but also puts that target firmly on our back often.
Correct. And whenever you do something well, there are always going to be other opportunities for countries or businesses to take advantage of that. But I think Cayman's just continuing to make sure that we stay at the forefront of the development of that industry and making sure that we're abiding by the rules and regulations that need to occur for it to exist at such a high standard, so at a gold standard. And I'll talk a little bit about, why Cayman, but just wanted to go quickly back to the numbers and what this means for sort of revenue generation for the island. So I just put some high-level numbers together just so we had a kind of a rough estimate of what these are. So if you look at having 30,700 registered funds, and each fund is paying on average roughly a registration fee of around $4,480 USD, that's generating about $138 million for the island every year. And I'm saying that's a rough estimate because there's going to be obviously different intricacies to do with those specific funds. But when we look at those numbers, $138 million, that's a lot of money. And if we add to that the annual fund annual return, that's also generating an additional $11.2 million. So it's about $150 million US every year generated for the Cayman Islands. That's big money. I mean, when you look at our collectively what our government's revenue is for for the year, it's about $1 billion. So we're looking at around, 15% of that is.
And that's just in fees that are paid. That doesn't
That's just
include
fees.
remotely
Correct.
all the other revenue that be generated by the service providers that operate here, the people that work here.
Yes, correct. And that money is really helping Cayman to continue to move forward. And we're also using that money to invest in making sure that we stay on top and that we're having the right people work in the industry. We're having our regulator and our government are working really hard on making sure that we continue to keep those numbers high, because I think it's an important revenue generator for the island. I'll also take another step back and say that around half of the government's revenues every year is generated through financial services, which is around $500 million. That's a very powerful number because there's around 6,000 people working in financial services here. 2/3 of those people are Caymanian. And so it's a very vital industry for Caymanians, that are obviously invested in wanting to continue to make it work, but also the fact that we are still a small population of people here that work in financial services, and the money generation is very large. And so I think that's giving Cayman an opportunity as we move forward to really look at, where it is that we want to position ourselves. Do we want to continue to stay a financial services hub? And if we do, we need to make sure we're investing in that space and continuing to allow it to thrive. And that's really our role at Cayman Finance, is to continue to make the industry thrive.
And in a sense, it also has a relatively low impact footprint on the economy, because 6,000 people aren't causing massive destruction to the environment and all those sorts of things that people have worried about in other sectors of the economy. But all the money, it's 50% of the GDP of the island being generated for a relatively low footprint. And that's quite a traumatic factor when you think about some of the debate that was had about cruise tourism, the number of people, and yet the tiny proportion that has, and yet the worry that people have about destruction of reefs, the number of people walking through towns, etc., etc. Cayman generates so much money from the financial services sector, but with a much lower footprint, which is only beneficial for the island.
Right. And I would, as a Caymanian myself, I would love to see more Caymanians have opportunities in this space. And I think that's one of the roles of Cayman Finance. We continue to want to make sure that every Caymanian has an opportunity to work in financial services if they would like to. And we continue to try to roll out opportunities for that to happen.
Well, what do you think the brand of Cayman in the financial services sector is? When people are overseas and they're thinking, I have so many options. I could use Cayman, I can use Luxembourg, Dublin, wherever it might be in the world. What is it about Cayman that stands out and that triggers people to think, yeah, I will use them as opposed to an alternative? Why are we at 30,000, for instance?
Sure. So I will speak from the funds perspective, because I think we're at various levels within the different sectors that we focus on of where we're at in growth. But I think for funds, we are known as the tried and trusted funds domicile worldwide. We have a lot of certainty here when it comes to the way that taxes are done. So we're obviously tax neutral here. There's no local taxes. We don't have capital gains or income tax on any of the funds that are set up here. And I think that's important, especially when you're pooling money from around the globe. It makes things a lot easier to be able to just to make sure that things are a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier to run. And then those individuals are paying their tax back in their home countries. Well, they should be paying tax in their home countries. And that's an important aspect of what's attractive about Cayman, because it really makes it a lot more favorable, a lot more clean to be able to do business through the fund, through a registered fund. I think also we have, we follow British common law here, having been around for the last 30, 40 years in Cayman. We've seen, hopefully, we don't want things to go negative when it comes to us having a fund set up and how that plays out throughout the years that it exists. But sometimes things don't go the way that we want them to. And, you need to be cognizant of the fact that you want a jurisdiction that has, laws in place that are favorable for investors, because at the end of the day, you want to get your money back. So, I think it's really been tested in the courts, and British common law is very strong. Whether it's whether you're trying to look at continuing to keep your fund in Cayman or whether you're looking to wind it down at some point, you need to always make sure that you're in a domicile that is really favorable from a legal perspective.
You got that certainty where if you want to do A, you know that the outcome in the courts, if you ask the courts for that, will lead to A. If you want to do B, because of X, Y, Z, B will happen as well. There's that certainty of knowledge as to what the court system will actually deliver.
It is, yes. And also, when we look at the standard setting bodies like the FATF and the OECD, we're very much in line with what their expectations are. We're considered right now a gold standard for as a funds domicile. And that's really important because we've worked very hard in Cayman. I mean, I know that the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, our regulator, our government are constantly working day in, day out on making sure that we stay off lists, that we are focused on, upholding the highest level of standards that we can, but also making sure that we understand the financial landscape and what it means to do business here, and being flexible enough to allow for that to happen. Also, I think, we've developed some really good standards around beneficial ownership in the last year. So that's come through, and I think it seems to be working well. We're constantly seeing, amendments being made in different aspects to making sure that our rules continue to be on the forefront of what it means to exist in an international financial hub. So I think we need to give a lot of applause to our government and to our regulator and also the industry itself in working together collectively to make Cayman favorable to have investment.
We've got about 2 minutes left in the show, and you've recently returned from trips to Asia. I'm curious, in those trips, you've met with a lot of people, both those who use Cayman, those who may not use Cayman. What's the general mood and feedback that you heard on the street as you were in people's meetings, in coffee shops, talking to people? What was the mood and what was the feedback you received?
Cayman's seen in a very, very favorable light. Having lived in Asia, obviously, it was important for me to go back there and kind of understand from a funds perspective how it's being seen. We still need to do a lot of efforts in the educational standpoint of how we get Cayman to the world, and let people know about what it is that we have as an opportunity here. Having gone to Japan and how much Japan is now using the Cayman Islands for investment funds, it's a big driver of new revenue growth for us. We need to be consistently going out to market and being able to promote in those jurisdictions and know that they've got the information they need to make a really informed decision on whether, they choose us as a funds domicile. And I think at the end of the day, I am, in charge of the fund space for Cayman Finance. And I would say you can't go wrong with Cayman if you're going to set up a fund here.
And perhaps the last piece of information I'd just like to extract from you is when people think about using funds in Cayman, the predominant client base is probably North America and UK. Is that still broadly speaking correct?
Yeah, so I was looking at some 2023 stats because that's what I have on file. About 73% of all of our funds are coming from the Americas. So that consists of North America, South America, Canada is considered in that space as well. So APAC is around 15%. Europe 11%, and the Middle East at around 1%. Obviously, yes, the U.S. is still predominantly the main user of Cayman funds, but we are seeing new markets pop up, or emerging markets within Brazil, Japan. We're starting to see more requests come in through different parts of Asia. India is a new place that we're looking into as well, and we're looking around what kind of laws and regulations need to be maybe adjusted or reviewed in order to make that favorable. And so that's part of my role is I go to both the existing and the new jurisdictions and make sure that Cayman has a place at the table. And I think it's important that we do.
So no resting on laurels, no just we've got so much of the market, let's just be happy with that. No, it's about exploring where we can get future business from as well.
Correct. And I'm super passionate about this. I think knowing that it's my home and something that I'm able to help generate opportunity for the island, I think it's really important.
Perfect. Well, Samantha, time regrettably has beaten us as it always does in our show. It's been a real pleasure. We've got through, perhaps about a third of the topics that we thought we might be able to discuss. So there's an opportunity perhaps to have you back on the show and discuss other topics in the near future. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Simon. It was awesome.
Last but not least, as ever, a quick reminder that our show can be found on YouTube. Just type Money Sense Cayman. And those with topics, please do send us an email that you wish us to cover. Send it to moneysense@cfacayman.ky. With all that said, it remains simply for me to say thank you for tuning in and encourage you to rejoin us in 2 weeks' time.